Alright, so in the last videos we have already discussed the core principles and base rules of project launching, branding, and marketing. And if you have not seen those videos yet, you can go and check them out there, or you will also find them recommended after this video. And in this video, as I promised, I will be going over all of the base rules and core principles of innovation. And as usual, if you have already seen the previous videos or been on this channel for a while, you know what exactly is about to go down. But in case you haven't, let me quickly introduce myself. So hi there, my darling humanoids, androids, reptiloids, asteroids, or whatever way you like to identify yourself. My name is Maria. I'm an architect by education who ended up getting a bit too much into user experience design and tech, and consequently fell down the rabbit hole of startups, entrepreneurship, and marketing. And as I was going along my journey of learning absolutely everything that I possibly could about these subjects, as well as getting real hands-on experience of working in startups, starting startups, doing marketing for startups, doing basically absolutely everything I possibly could with startups, I decided to create a series of guidebooks to guide other people that might be getting into the field. And you can find those guidebooks totally for free via the link down below. And this is not a sales pitch, by the way. I literally do just give them to you for free via the link down below because I literally just have a passion for sharing useful information with other people. Hence, I have also created now this YouTube series where I essentially go over the subjects that I cover in the guidebooks, but in a video format, so that it is even easier to dissect everything and understand everything, and to get more helpful commentary as you might be going through the guidebooks themselves. So that being mentioned, the best way to go about watching this video is to either A, get a piece of paper or like a Word document or something where you can make notes while you're watching this video, or you can once again download the necessary guidebook from the link down below and go through the guidebook while you're watching this video. So today's subject, once again, is innovation. And let me just preface everything by making a statement that innovation and any type of transformation should only be commenced if there is an actual problem to be solved. That is not to say that you're forbidden from trying to do innovation and transformation, but this is more about the fact that if there is no problem to be solved, if there's nothing to be improved, then you will just simply not be able to improve anything. If there's nothing to be fixed, you cannot fix it. Okay? Got it? Got it. Because in essence, innovation for the sake of just innovation will just be a massive waste of time and resources. And my second core statement for today will be that the best practice for implementing innovation is the Agile methodology, with the inclusion of time boxes, constraint-based thinking, and empathetic problem solving. So let's start with what is innovation in general. Innovation is a method of deriving greater value from the resources that we have at our disposal. So in the language of business, greater benefit means greater ROI, and ROI stands for returns on investment, which can be measured via profits per dollar, or how much do the benefits of a project or an initiative outweigh the costs. So this is exactly what I meant when I said that innovation has to be solving an actual problem. Because in essence, solving problems is exactly what can increase the return on investments of a certain project, company, product, system, so on and so forth. And in order to properly understand if the benefits of some endeavor will outweigh the costs by the end of the completion of such an endeavor, we need to understand the capability ROI formula. And in order to use that formula, we need to first model the organization as a process. Second, understand where this process actually derives value. So what is its purpose of being? What the objectives of each operation are in measurable terms. And so for the capability ROI, those terms will be either measured in time or in resources. Next, we need to determine the baseline original performance, so measure the initial costs and throughput of the processes that already exist within a company or a system as they are currently, and then evaluate the performance of said system with the new implementations that we're trying to provide, that we're trying to create. So essentially, we're trying to understand, does the innovation that we're implementing, does this new process or thing that we're creating actually bring value? And so the capability ROI formula will be here, where essentially we're evaluating the difference between the original throughput and the new throughput, as well as the original cost of a certain process versus the new cost. Once again, whether it's measuring in time, money, or any other resource that we are able to evaluate the system with. And so to ensure that the impact of some change or innovation is possible, we need to make sure that this capability ROI formula's output is greater than 0, which essentially means that this new implementation provides greater value at lower cost. And the key to all of this is really to understand the purpose of this project within the buyer's organization, be that the company that we're serving, be that the person's life, be that a group of people, whatever our project is aimed at. Because the project objectives of the innovation that we're implementing must align with the organization in order to ensure that the value is actually increasing. Because obviously the most typical reason for projects to fail is when the objectives of a project mismatch the actual requirements of the end users, customers, and buyers. So thus far, the main questions that we're supposed to answer are: 1, what are the actual objectives of the business operation as a whole? So what are the actual objectives of the organization that we're implementing an innovation to? Secondly, what is the value delivered by the operation or the business or the system as it exists currently? Third, we need to determine what are the existing resources of the company, person, or once again, whatever market sector we are addressing. And fourth, we need to determine what is the purpose of this project that we're creating, of this endeavor, and how does that relate to the purposes and the resources of the organization that we are implementing this project into. So after we have found the purpose for this project, we need to actually start searching for solutions to the problem that we have outlined. And so to expand on that, in order to find a problem or a solution to a problem, we need to first of all understand the buyer's system or the user system. And the buyer system is essentially just the user journey, the user path, as it relates to this endeavor that we are embarking on. So just in case I'm being a bit too distant and hypothetical in the subject, let me give you an example. The one that I have given previously. Let's say that our purpose is innovation in the way that people brush their teeth and maintain their mouth hygiene. So in this case, the buyer system would be the process that they go through typically while they're doing whatever activities they do in order to maintain their mouth health. So let's say that their typical process is like brushing their teeth, rinsing their mouth with this the mouthwash liquid. Then they use floss, and then they happily go on their merry way. So in this particular scenario, the buyer system would be the process that they go through in order to actually brush their teeth, floss their teeth, and use mouthwash, as well as beyond just the actual process of it, what leads up to it. So how do they select the products that they will use to maintain their mouth hygiene, and how they will get rid of those products. So what is the user journey to buying the toothbrush, the floss, the mouthwash? What is their process of actually using those objects? And what is their process of getting rid of them? Do they throw them in the bin? Do they recycle them? So on and so forth. And now the key that we are looking for is called the bottleneck. So the bottleneck is essentially the hiccup, the issue that gets in the way of a person or an organization or a business executing the task that they're attempting to execute, or whatever is causing delays or some kind of a stagnation. And otherwise, you can call this bottleneck the value constraint, because once again, it is a point in the system where the user or the buyer experiences the most constraint. And some typical indicators of a bottleneck would usually be that, first of all, it is a place in the system that is always running at full capacity and requiring too much effort or too many resources. Then the second indicator is that this process is frequently breaking down or having issues. And third, that this is a process that gathers a huge backlog of work, very clearly causing delays and stagnation on all of the other tasks. And in essence, the nature of bottlenecks is that it doesn't matter how much you speed up, streamline, or optimize all of the other processes around it, the throughput, so the value and the results coming out after undergoing this process, will not change. So the bottleneck is the place where essentially the whole system tends to stagnate. So now the question is to you, after outlining the user's journey that your project is aiming at, what is the strongest bottleneck in the user's journey? And that is what you actually want to be resolving for. And now that we have outlined the problem or the bottleneck in a system, the two ways that most innovative solutions tend to go is by either cleaning up the waste around the bottleneck, by either slowing down the upstream processes that lead up to the bottleneck, or improving their quality in order to make it easier for whatever it is that is going through the bottleneck to go through the bottleneck. And then the second way is that we increase the speed or the capacity of the bottleneck. And this is typically what has the most effect on the whole system, because here we're actually looking at how we can change or improve or impact the bottleneck itself so that the processes around it don't have to be affected or changed in any way. But then obviously a typical consequence of expanding the bottleneck or changing it on some sort is that a bottleneck just tends to move down the system. So yes, you have resolved the bottleneck in a certain part of a system, but typically you will later find another bottleneck emerging just in a different part. And why I mention this is because essentially this gives you the opportunity to either expand the solution, expand the usage of the product, the scope of the product, or to anticipate what may come as a consequence of your product being released on the market or of your project being utilized within a company. So the main question in this section is to think about how can you increase the capacity or efficiency of the bottleneck process in the system that you have been looking at thus far. And now we have finally arrived at my second point, which was the Agile methodology. Now, if you're unfamiliar with it, I'm just going to explain it really, really simply to you. There are multiple steps to this methodology, and those steps essentially are, first, planning the project, second, designing the output of this project, third, developing the output of the project, fourth is ensuring that the output goes through all of the necessary testing, fifth is deploying the output, sixth is doing a review of the deployed output in order to plan the further improvement that can be done down the line. And this is exactly why I mentioned that the bottleneck tends to shift. Once you resolve the bottleneck in one place, it emerges in a different place within the system. So this is exactly where you kind of get the shift between the deployment, review, and once again planning for the next iteration of the project, product, or whatever it is. Because essentially in the review, you either discover where the bottleneck shifted within the buyer's system, or you discover a bottleneck within your own system, the output that you have created, and have to reiterate on it in order to improve the product that you are releasing. So once again, plan, design, develop, test, release or deploy, and review. And so the way that the innovation process is typically executed is essentially that you just pile on one agile process on top of another. So especially in tech companies, typically the whole product goes through an agile methodology process. And then within the product, so you essentially have a product goal from which you derive the sprint goal. So the goal for a particular part or aspects of a product that you're developing. And with that sprint goal, you once again go through the agile methodology, through the agile framework, in order to resolve it, release it into the main product, and then release that main product to be also tested and then reiterated on once again. And essentially, that's exactly why I call this channel life spirals, is that it is all just agile within agile, iteration within iteration, that just keeps going on and on and on and on until you reach a point where you have come to a somewhat decent solution, release it out onto the public, and then go back to reiterate on it once more, going down this agile spiral. And essentially, in this process of reiteration, what you want to do is take small chunks of work to resolve and to then deliver to be tested within the buyer system until you ensure that the bottleneck has moved from that part that you have just been resolving. And then essentially take a chunk of the next part that now has the bottleneck in order to, once again, when you find a solution, go and test it within the buyer system and keep reiterating in it and improving it until you realize that the solution is as good as it gets and the bottleneck has now moved to elsewhere. And now, as you may have noticed, this whole process contains a lot of uncertainty. And so, as it relates to implementing innovation, uncertainty, when it can be quantified, becomes what we call a risk. And there are three commonplace types of uncertainty: business uncertainty, technical uncertainty, and environmental uncertainty. And so some typical risk factors to look out for as you're implementing innovation on its business side are the process model risk, the risks and job understanding and motivations of the team and or people who are executing the job, risks related to incentives and attitudes towards the actual program, risks that come from the process constraints within the organization, then also employee skills, organizational priorities, and organizational leadership. And once again, we will get more into all of this organizational stuff and all of the business aspects of creating a product, project, whatever, in the next videos. But for now, this is just an overview of the risks that you might want to look out for. Then the risks that typically emerge on the side of the technical uncertainty are the risks in tech reliability, data accuracy, tech disruption, current abilities and methods of integration, future potential issues that may come up with the integration of a certain technology, the support of the vendors that are distributing the technology, as well as the emergent behavior that may come as a consequence of the use of the technology that we are attempting to implement. And that some environmental uncertainty risk factors tend to include political acceptance as well as economic trends, the organizational agreements and regulations around the company, the certainty of funding, as well as the special interests that may emerge during the process of the project creation. But all of those risk factors are always outshined by our biggest risk and uncertainty, which is user adoption. The question is always, does the user, the customer, actually need what it is that we are creating? So the question that I propose for you to answer here is, what are the uncertainties and the risks within your project, as well as how can you mitigate all of them? At least the ones that you can think of right now, and that you can find solutions or ways to mitigate at this stage. And then further down the line, you will obviously have to once again come back to this question of what are the risks and the uncertainties within the project, and revise once again what are some ways that you can resolve and mitigate them. But we will get to risk assessments and risk mitigation in some further videos as well. But as we said, the biggest uncertainty is always, do the clients and the customers actually need whatever it is that we're innovating, creating, and stuff like that? So the real core theme and the core task here is to discover the product market fit for your product. And pretty much all methods that you can find that are relevant in the modern day of how to find a product market fit use some kind of an iteration of the BLM methodology, which is the build, measure, learn method, because that is essentially what lays at the core of all of this. Is that if you build something, you measure the output, and you learn from the results. So the goal of this build, measure, learn cycle is really to just keep testing the hypothesis of your product market fit. So before you embark, as I have outlined in previous videos, you need to already have a hypothesis of, first of all, the value that you're providing with your product and or service, the hypothesis on who your customers and users actually are, then a hypothesis on the product delivery, as well as the delivery of all of the marketing and customer support of the product and or service. And then you have a hypothesis on how you will commence the marketing of this product. And so once again, the way that you test all of these hypotheses is through the build, measure, learn cycle. Or once again, the Agile methodology as mentioned above. So the process that we have now arrived to is basically the customer development process, where you go through the customer discovery, where you validate that the customers or users that you have hypothesized need your product actually, once again, need your product. So you have to study the problem solution fit. So whether the solution that you're proposing actually does solve the problem, then testing of the proposed MVP. So once again, if you haven't watched the previous videos, MVP is the minimum viable product. So the minimum output that you can create to release to your users to be tested. And then also testing the proposed funnel. So the channels and methods that you have hypothesized might aid you in reaching the right clients. So that also obviously has to be tested. And then the second core aspect of customer development is the customer validation, where you determine whether you can sustainably deliver your product and earn a profit while doing so. And during this stage, you're essentially testing whether you have actually found your product market fit, so the combination of the value provided to the customer needs. Then you're also testing to see if you have correctly developed your business model, so whether you actually get the required ROI from this project. And you're also testing your sales and marketing roadmap. So this is done through observing whether you can actually sustainably bring in customers and get them through the funnel in order to sell the product or solution to them. So just to ensure that this is done properly, let's revise what we have spoken about in the previous videos. The first question to answer is, what needs does your customer actually have? Second, how does your solution benefit the customer, or how does it solve their need? And third, what is your concept or hypothesis about the minimum viable product that can fulfill those needs and deliver value to your customers? Then the fourth question is, how can you actually reach your customers in order to deliver to them the MVP to be tested? Then how does the market and the customer themselves actually profit once you have implemented the solution? Then also, what is actually your business model for implementing this solution? And lastly, what are your marketing hypotheses? So how are you planning to sustainably discover your clients as well as get them to buy your product? So as you may have also noticed, a really core aspect of the customer validation process is understanding whether your customers are sustainable. And not sustainable in the sense of like, do they recycle and are they vegan? No, I mean sustainable in the sense that can you maintain the system that you're creating? So will your customers keep supporting and feeding your business as it keeps growing? Will they not just come in, get the product once, and then leave and never want to come back again? Because basically, if that is happening, so the customers are just coming in, grabbing the product and then not coming back, that is because you have not properly sorted out your customer discovery process. So you have to go back and once again, take your learnings and reiterate once again. And finally, once you find that you at long last have discovered that proper product market fit, your customers are all happy, you're solving their problems, and they're coming back for more, it comes time to cross the chasm where you can finally go from early adopters, so the first people that have been trying your MVP, testing your product, enjoying it, giving you reviews and stuff like that, to moving to the early adopters. So I will just quickly insert a graphic here of the adoption curve of a product. And so essentially the chasm is the stage where you're moving from working on the product mainly to working more so on the business around the product. Well, obviously still reiterating and improving the product, but it's a focus shift from being pretty much solely focused on the products and the initial marketing to more the organization and management of the product build out. And this process is essentially where we're beginning to scale our project. And once again, I will be talking about project scaling in the next video. For now, we're just focusing on the innovation aspect. But just to shortly cover and give you some spoilers on the scaling process, some essential pivots that you will likely be going through is the zooming in pivot, where you might figure out that there is a certain part of your product and or service that is actually super duper valuable, and it may not always be the part that you expect. And so it makes more sense to zoom in and focus more on that part than the zoom out process, where you realize that your product as a whole is incomplete or potentially requires some additional services or education for the users in order to make it actually useful for them. Then pivoting the customer segment, where you might realize that you're actually aiming all of your marketing towards the wrong segment of users, and there's actually a whole other segment of people that might prefer to actually use your product and would actually make for better customers. The pivot of customer needs, where you might realize that the needs that you have outlined are not actually the core needs that your product ends up solving. And so you have to once again go and reiterate on all of the planning that you have done before and outline a totally different list of customer needs that you're actually resolving. You might also pivot on the value capture, so the way that you actually get customers to pay for your product. So whether it is a direct payment model, whether it is a freemium model where you go from a free service to a paid service as you add more details and more value to what the customer gets. Then you might also pivot the channels that you're using to actually distribute your product or to tell people that your products exist, so the channels of the marketing. And so as a consequence, you might pivot your whole growth strategy, the value customer hypothesis, the delivery hypothesis, and the marketing hypothesis. So the 7 questions that you really actually have to answer to yourself to understand whether your innovation will actually be a success is, first of all, is whatever solution you are suggesting actually 10 times better than what has existed before? So what is the incentive for the users and customers to actually switch to your solution? Because they will not switch just because you tell them that it's better. It has to actually be proven that it's better. It has to be 10, 100 times better than the previous solution that they had. And if it's not the product itself that's 10 or 100 times better, it has to be the marketing or the business model around the product that is 10 or 100 times better, yeah? And then so obviously you have to outline why you think that your product is better than the alternatives that have existed before. Then second, is it the right time for your innovation to be implemented? Does the market actually have a space and a capacity to allow for your innovation to expand and grow? Third, do you have a monopoly on the market, or will you have to battle against a lot of other competitors? And if you have a monopoly, then that's great, but if you don't, estimate how difficult would it be to actually battle against the other competition that exists out there. Then fourth, do you actually have the right people that you need on the team, and why? I will once again, I keep going on about once again, but once again, I will be making a video on creating a team and people management and all of those good things and further down the line in this series. But for now, just answer to yourself the question of, do you have the right team on hand to actually deliver this innovation? Do those people actually have the expertise that you need? And who do you actually need? Then do you actually have the distribution capability? So will you actually be able to deliver your product in the time that it is required to be delivered? And this is, by the way, why IT is so huge right now, is just because like through the internet, delivery of digital products is just so much simpler than delivery of physical products. Then is your innovation and or business actually durable? So will you actually be able to sustain it further down the line? And how do you plan on actually sustaining your business, and or how are you planning to have this innovation or project evolve further down the line? And lastly, what is the advantage that you have? What makes you, your product, your project, your team, your particular circumstances so special that they should or could outshine all of the competition and all of the uncertainty? What is it? Now, the very last aspect that I will talk about is just to summarize the difference between innovation in a product and innovating a process. You can find a few more exercises once again in the workbook via the link down below, as always. But the very essence of this difference comes down to, in order to innovate a product, you have to deepen the relationship with the users and with the customers in order to resolve their bottleneck. And the best methodology for this is to use design thinking, which is essentially everything that I have been talking about thus far. That is mostly design thinking. So thinking about user needs, user requirements first. And then on the other hand, if you're innovating a process, you have to look at the organization and find the bottleneck and the constraints within the organization in order to resolve those bottlenecks and constraints. But do you know what both of those innovation types need in order to actually be properly executed and implemented? That is proper leadership, which we will be talking about next time. So for now, just be good, do good things for good people, keep innovating, and I shall see you in the next video. Bye bye!